You are Locked On Jets POSTCAST, part of Locked On Sports New York on the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
The New York Jets snap their losing streak at 5, and they keep their season, I guess, somewhat alive. Welcome in to the Locked On Jets POSTCAST. I am your host, Chris Schubert. It feels like it's been a little bit since we've been here celebrating a victory edition of the Locked On Jets POSTCAST, but that is exactly what we have in store tonight as the New York Jets defeat the Houston Texans on Thursday Night Football by a final score of 21-13. It was a tale of two halves for a football team that started out looking like a house of horrors on Halloween, but in the end, it was a happy ending. It was a good ending for the New York Jets on Thursday night against the Houston Texans. We will unpack it all here on the Locked On Jets POSTCAST, but before we do, got to tell you that this episode is brought to you by PrizePicks. Go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnNFL and use code, all lowercase, LockedOnNFL to win $50 instantly when you play $5. A tale of two halves for the New York Jets, who moved to 3-6. They snap their 5-game losing streak. They win the first game in the Jeff Ulbrich era, and now they get a little bit of a mini bye before going on the road to take on the Arizona Cardinals next week in Glendale to try to start a winning streak of some kind. They have one of those this season for 2 games. They will look to match that with a win next weekend against Arizona, but we are not going to put the cart in front of the horse. We are going to take it one game at a time, and this was a tale of two halves. And it is interesting that on Halloween, it felt like a house of horrors. It felt like we were watching a horror movie in the first half of this football game tonight, because it felt like the same New York Jet operation that put us into a 2-6 hole. It felt like the same operation, the same lack of discipline, the same lack of focus that saw the Jets dig themselves this almost impossible hole to dig themselves out of. I had, at one point in the game, had the book out, and I was writing down all of the disastrous plays that this team was making in the first half, ones that actually went against them and the others that were near disasters that almost went against them. And it was early, and it was often that I think we felt like this felt like it was going to be a continuation of what we saw against New England, what we saw against Buffalo, what we saw throughout this 5-game losing streak, a close competitive game that the New York Jets were ultimately going to let slip through their grasp, even though they had an opportunity to win the football game. And that first offensive drive at home after losing to New England the week prior in a game that they absolutely had to have, this team goes 3 and out on the first drive, and you're thinking to yourself, oh no, here we go again, because then they follow that up with a 4-play drive in which they punt, and the defense was doing their part. They had a turnover on the second drive via a fumble. It felt like the defense came to play. It felt like they came to show out. It looked like they were going to do their part to keep this game close, but the offense through the first 2 drives felt like it was going to be a very similar story to what we have seen from this offense during this losing streak. And then finally, things break open for the New York Jets. They open up. The opportunities present themselves, and the New York Jets find a way to get their rookie wide receiver involved. Allen Lazard placed on injured reserve before the game, so that opened up some opportunities for Malachi Corley to be involved in this offense, and they draw up a great play for him, a little end around to get him involved in this offense, and he's able to break one for 19 yards, and he gets into the end zone for a touchdown, and you're thinking to yourself, man, Todd Downing, why couldn't we have done this a couple of weeks ago? We drafted this kid. Why couldn't we get him more involved? Well, as Lee Corso would say, not so fast, my friends, because upon further review, Malachi Corley drops the ball before he crosses the goal line, before he breaks the plane. The ball rolls through the back of the end zone, ergo touchback. Ball will be returned to the Houston Texans, and I think that was the moment where it all broke down at MetLife Stadium. That was the moment where I think fans had reached what they felt like was rock bottom, because you were watching a football team that has all the talent in the world, a future Hall of Fame quarterback, a future Hall of Fame wide receiver, a young wide receiver who made one of the most incredible plays you will ever see, so much so that he's got his own little section here on the show rundown. You have all the talent that this team has assembled along the offensive line, the money that they've invested along the offensive line. You have DJ Reed and Sauce Gardner, who I know were in and out of this game because of injury. But you have talent all over. Hassan Reddick is back on this defense. Quinnen Williams is on the center of this defensive line. There is talent all over the place, yet this team does not play like a team unit. That's what you're feeling when Malachi Corley makes the boneheaded play of dropping the ball before he crosses the plane. You are watching this game thinking, this is the most Jets thing that this team could do. This team has hit rock bottom by losing 5 in a row, and yet they found a way to find a new rock bottom, because even when they score a touchdown, they can't score a touchdown. Even when they have a big moment, they can't have a big moment. They somehow have to find a way to turn it into the same old Jets, and that the Jets are jetsing once again. How do they follow up that fumble? Well, their next drive out, they punt. What do they do after that? The defense gives up a touchdown. There are sell the team chants that are extremely loud in the building. The offense is dropping passes. They are missing wide open receivers if you're Aaron Rodgers. The only thing they could do is run the football. You're watching this team and you're thinking to yourself, this is it. On national television, once again, this team is going to completely screw it up. They are going to completely just blow an opportunity here, because the defense was doing its part in the first half. Aaron Rodgers had one of the worst first half he's going to have in his career. And you think to yourself, here we go again. This team is going to be 2-7, and we're going to just start talking draft. These postcasts, I don't know what we're going to talk about, but we'll find a way to get through them. That's what I was feeling while watching this game in the first half, watching a team have only one drive go more than 4 plays, and it was the one that ended in the Malachi Corley fumble through the back of the end zone. You're watching an offense that was inefficient in the first half. You were watching an Aaron Rodgers that was missing Davante Adams, wasn't on the same page with Davante Adams. When's the last time you could say that occurred? It just felt like the Jets were jetsing in the most Jets way possible. It's the only way to describe what that first half was for the New York Jets. They were doing everything they could to hand the game to the Houston Texans. They were doing everything they could to lose this football game and completely end any fringe talk of them turning this season around. And yet, you looked up going into the locker room after all of that stuff that I just said, after everything that had happened in the first half, Breece Hall fumbling the ball but recovering it, Malachi Corley throwing the ball through the back of the end zone because he drops it at the goal line going in for a touchdown, Tyler Conklin on the following drive catching a pass, turning up field, and fumbling the ball, ultimately was ruled an incomplete pass. I mean, this team had disaster after near disaster in the first half. Yet you go into the locker room and you look up, and your defense has kept this game to 7-0. The New York Jets defense somehow found a way to confuse C.J. Stroud for the second straight year, and it was 7-0 at halftime. Despite all of that, despite all of the chaos that the New York Jets bring upon themselves in these football games, they were only down a touchdown, and they were getting the ball to start the second half. And that is where potentially the New York Jets turned their season around. So on the other side, we will get into how the New York Jets might have saved their season with a second half that looked more like what we wanted to see from the New York Jets. So we will do that here in just a second. Our friends over at 5 Hour Energy know that being a passionate football fan isn't just a hobby, it's a way of life. It takes a lot of energy to power through all-day tailgates, touchdown celebrations, or agonizing second overtime, or just watching the New York Jets on a regular basis, which is why they've created the Stan the Fan 5 Hour Energy Shot with a special flavor called Fan Fuel. The energy shot made just for super fans like you, the fans who are first in the parking lot and who are last to leave. We see you. 5 Hour Energy knows that no matter what team you root for, being a fan requires heart, soul, and a whole lot of energy. Whether you're prepping for the big tailgate or ironing your jersey, your game day to-do list is always a mile long. That's why the limited edition Stan the Fan 5 Hour Energy Shot is here to help keep you fueled throughout the season. What's your fan fuel this week? Whatever it is, do it with a 5 Hour Energy, available on 5hourenergy.com, shipped nationwide. I see Mr. Papa in the chat saying this team is insanely insane. I think that's the only way to describe what the New York Jets do to us on a regular basis. Make sure you subscribe to us here on the Locked On Sports New York YouTube channel so that you are able to join us after each and every Jets game here on the channel. I've got you covered on the Jets, and when baseball season starts up again, I've got you covered on the Mets side of things, and you've got Jay Berman covering you throughout the remainder of the Giants season as well. So if you want to keep tabs on the other New York football team, he's got you covered there as well. So make sure that you subscribe, you turn on that notification bell so that you are notified when we go live. All right, let's get into the second half of this game, because despite the craziness and the chaotic disappointment of the first half and just the Jets literally scoring touchdowns that couldn't count because they make silly decisions, the second half, they go immediately down the field with one of the best drives we've seen in a long time. They go down the field, 11 plays, 70 yards, and they throw a touchdown to Garrett Wilson. That is not the Garrett Wilson touchdown that we will ultimately talk about. It was another one-handed catch touchdown from Garrett Wilson, but not the one that everybody is going to remember from this game. But instantly, the New York Jets came out in the second half, and they took advantage of the opportunity that the Houston Texans gifted them, because the Houston Texans did not take advantage of all of the disaster that was the first half. The Houston Texans did not have a 2-score lead. The Houston Texans didn't go into halftime up 10-0. 14-0, 17-0. They did not take advantage of the mistake. The Malachi Corley fumble out of the back of the end zone, the following drive for the Texans was a 3-and-out and a punt. They did not take advantage, and they opened the door, and the New York Jets, like we thought they would be able to do more often than not with this quarterback, with this wide receiver core, now with Davante Adams in the fold, with this running back, with the investments along this offensive line, that they would be able to have more drives that looked like what they came out in the second half and did, and go right down the field, 11 plays, 70 yards, and tie this game up. And I'll tell you, every drive for the New York Jets in the second half was a positive drive. Even the last drive, which was one play for -1 yards, it was because they kneeled down to end the game. So 4 drives in the second half, and they were 4 positive drives. They start with the touchdown to make it 7-7, and then they, after a field goal from Houston, makes it 10-7. They go on another double-digit play drive. They go 12 plays, 70 yards. And how does that one end? It ends with the most insane touchdown catch I think you will see this season. I don't know if you will see a touchdown as good as what Garrett Wilson was able to do, channeling his inner Odell Beckham Jr., going up, full extension, Air Jordan-esque, reaching back one-handed, catching the ball, securing it, and then also somehow finding a way to get his shin down before his knee hit out of bounds. And the play happened, and I texted a buddy, and I said, holy cow, I used a different word I can't say here on the Locked On Jets postcast. I don't think that's going to count, but that's one of the most insane things that I've ever seen. And then they went to review it, and I saw all the angles of the review, and I said, yeah, it does look like that shin gets down, but the knee also goes down pretty quickly. Like, the Jets don't get these. The Jets don't get these plays to go their way. The Jets don't get these replays to go their way. The Jets don't get these calls to go their way. Well, sure enough, they said that shin touchdown before the knee hit out of bounds, and the New York Jets were celebrating a touchdown to take the lead, and they were up 14-10. And again, that is going to be one of the more incredible plays that you're going to see a wide receiver make this season. We'll get into Garrett Wilson and just in general thoughts about the stats from this game in the final segment of the show. But you get a touchdown there to make it 14-10. And then if you wanted to point out 2 drives that I think swung this game for the Jets, it was the first drive out of half to immediately show we've got this. We are able to get our star players involved. We are going to be able to put up points on this Houston Texan defense. We can move the ball up and down the field. That first drive to score points, to tie the game, to show that the offense had some life, that the offense had some ability to do anything in this game, unlike in the first half. That, to me, was drive number 1. And then drive number 2, the 12-play drive by the Houston Texans after the touchdown that made it 14-10. And I'll tell you what, this drive at times didn't feel like it was going to go the way you needed it to go. But the Houston Texans go down the field. And on 4th and 22, the Texans kick a field goal. Kaimi Fairbairn makes a 43-yard field goal to make this 14-13. And he does so with about 8 and change to go left in the fourth quarter. But there's a penalty on the Jets. And it was a penalty on Eric Watts for unnecessary roughness. The right call, right? Not arguing the call, but it extended the drive. So it takes the points off the board, makes it 14-10. Now the Texans are fresh set of downs, opportunity for a touchdown to take the lead. Well, then the New York Jets defense comes up with what I think was one of their most important stops of the year, because they forced them back into a field goal. No matter what happened, no matter whether or not Kaimi Fairbairn made the field goal or doinked it off the upright, the Jets did the most important thing. They didn't allow the Texans to score a touchdown, and they watched precious time come off the clock, because the Texans now were going to need to see the ball again, and they wasted 2.5, 3 minutes trying to score a touchdown. It's almost as if they would have rather gone in the time machine, gone back into time, and taken the field goal with 8:23, make it 14-13, and give the ball to the Jets, and then hopefully their defense could have made a stop, because they could have gotten that time back. And then the insult added to the injury is then he missed the field goal. So you take the points off the board. You then don't get into the end zone with the next 3 plays that you get. You lose the time off the clock, and now you miss the field goal. So now the Jets have an opportunity, one drive, to drain the clock. You might get the ball back, and if you do, you're going to have to drive a pretty long way, needing a touchdown, not just needing a field goal. So it was the worst thing in the world for the New York Jets to extend that drive, and then it also became the best thing with what they were able to do and how they were able to hold everything up. So the Jets able to make a stand there. They get a little lucky with the ball doinking off of the uprights, and then they get the ball back, and they go on the drive to absolutely ice this game. And it was a lot of Breece Hall. It was getting the ball to Garrett Wilson. I thought the 3rd and 1 play call, a little play action pass to a streaking out of the fullback, out of the backfield, out of the tight end on the end of the formation, just seemingly in the mush, just kind of sneaks out Kenny Yeboah, and he's able to get free and pick up a first down on 3rd and 1. I thought that was a really nifty play call by Todd Downing to everyone thinks you're going to run the football, and you certainly don't think it's going to be Kenny Yeboah who the play is designed for, but that's exactly who the play was designed for. So credit to Todd Downing there to draw that one up. And then you extend the drive, and then what you brought him here for. Aaron Rodgers takes the deep shot to Davante Adams and absolutely ices this game. Davante Adams scores his first touchdown in a Jets uniform, and the emotion that you saw from Davante Adams, the emotion that you saw from Aaron Rodgers, it feels like something clicked for this team. It feels like something was turned over for this team. Now, they're still 3-6. There's still a lot of season to play. They still have to prove that they are more like the team that played in the second half and not the team that played in the first half, because there's a larger sample size of that first half team. But it felt like things were different. It felt like Rodgers and the team understood the magnitude of the moment in the second half, and that they were able to channel that energy, channel that moment, and meet that moment. And there are times during the season where you're able to come through in a big spot and potentially change your season. And if this team is to turn things around, if this team is to go on a run to make the end of their season competitive, to make the end of their season important and meaningful, and to have them be in contention late, then we might look back at the second half of this game against the Texans as a major reason why they were able to do so. There was one performance that stood out among the rest, but we will get into that. And the box score from the game is the Jets snap their 5-game losing streak. They move to 3-6, find themselves with a little mini bye, but we will get to that here on the other side. Get ready to tackle the rest of the NFL action with FanDuel, America's #1 sports book, because right now new customers can bet $5 to get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. Maybe you took the Jets -2.5 tonight against the Houston Texans. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. Maybe you sit back, relax, enjoy some Sunday NFL action with your bets now that the Jets have a win in the bank. Well, you visit FanDuel.com today. You'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. Listen up, renters. You ever feel like you're stuck in this loop of rent payments, just watching your money vanish into thin air? It's time to turn that rent game around and start earning some serious rewards. That's where Bilt Rewards come in. All right, real talk. We've all been there, feel like we're burning cash with those rent checks. It's frustrating, right? But here's the deal. Bilt Rewards has figured out a way to make rent more rewarding. Say goodbye to the money bonfire and hello to a renter's revolution with Bilt. Bilt is breaking ground as a neighborhood rewards program that hooks you up with points on your rent. Every month, pay your rent and watch the Bilt points roll in. Use the points to jet off on a dream vacation. Put your points towards a flight or hotel stay with 500 plus airlines and 700 plus hotels and properties. You also use your points to book fitness studio classes, redeem them towards a future rent payment. They're designed to meet your lifestyle. Pay rent hassle-free through the Bilt Rewards app. Your rent game just got a major upgrade. Bilt points have been constantly ranked the highest value point currency by the Point Guys and Bank Rate. Earn points by paying rent right now when you go to joinbilt.com/lockedonnfl. That's joinbilt, joinbilt.com/lockedonnfl. Make sure to use our URL so they know we sent you. Joinbilt.com/lockedonnfl to start earning points with your next rent payments today. Wrapping up this edition of the Locked On Jets postcast, make sure you are tuned into the Locked On Jets podcast. I'm sure John will have even more thoughts just tonight, tomorrow, the rest of the week, especially with the mini bye for the New York Jets as they turn their season around and potentially save their season. At least give that game next week against the Cardinals a little more meaning. But as we wrap up this edition of the Locked On Jets postcast, let's go through the box score and highlight some of the bigger stats from this game. And you wouldn't know it by the way the first half went down, but Aaron Rodgers finishing the day 211 passing yards, 3 touchdowns, no interceptions. I can't tell you the last time the Jets had a 3-touchdown game. I believe they showed a stat at the end of the broadcast that it was the first 3-touchdown game for the New York Jets in their last 32 games. So few and far between for the New York Jets, but they were able to get one tonight from Aaron Rodgers. Breece Hall, 15 carries for 74 yards, leading the way, 4.9 yards per carry. In the first half, it seemingly was the only thing that either team could do was run the football, because on the other side of things, Joe Mixon, 24 carries, 106 yards, and a touchdown. The Jets didn't have an answer for him defensively. They were missing tackles. He was finding open space. It was not necessarily the prettiest thing in the first half defensively. It was bend but don't break. But Joe Mixon and company were running the football. They were breaking tackles. Tank Dell was open quite a bit. Like it was a bend but don't break approach in a lot of ways for the New York Jets defense, but they did make life difficult for C.J. Stroud, finishing 11 for 30, 191 yards, a very pedestrian day for C.J. Stroud. Was sacked 8 times in this football game. Hassan Reddick got his first sack, or first half sack for the New York Jets. They had sacks from Quinnen Williams, DJ Reed on a corner blitz. Solomon Thomas got in there. Hassan Reddick got in there. Jamin Sherwood picked up 2 sacks. So they were bringing the boom defensively, and it was a struggle in the first half to get home with some pressure against this offensive line. But by the time the night was over, the New York Jets put together a nice performance defensively. And when you look at the receivers for the New York Jets, this should come as no surprise. Davante Adams, 7 catches for 91 yards and a touchdown on a team-high 11 targets. And Garrett Wilson, 9 catches for 90 yards, 2 touchdowns on 10 targets. Garrett Wilson had the game that we all know that he is able to have. That is the game that we thought we would see more of with Aaron Rodgers throwing him the football. He made 2 of the most incredible one-handed touchdown catches you will ever see. The first one was impressive because he had a defender kind of attached to him, and he had to reach out in front and grab it in stride and then control it and get into the end zone. And then the second outdid the first, because the second is one of the most incredible catches that I've ever seen. It was insane that he was able to get that ball, corral that ball, bring that ball in, get the shin down, and then also survive the ground. The amount of things that Garrett Wilson had to do on that catch to make sure it was a touchdown, it's insane that he was able to do so. I mean, he had to first get the ball, then bring it in, secure it, get the shin down, survive the ground. I mean, it was insane. And again, if the Jets turn this season around, if this is the launching point to, instead of a 5-game losing streak, a 5-game winning streak, I think we are going to look back in a big way to that catch, to that moment as the turning point for the Jets season. So those are the stats. Those are the big takeaways from the New York Jets, who win on Thursday Night Football. They snap their losing streak, and they put themselves in position to potentially go on a little bit of a run here starting next week against the Arizona Cardinals. It is a 21-13 win for the Jets over the Houston Texans. We appreciate you joining us here on the Locked On Jets postcast here on the Locked On Sports New York YouTube channel. Make sure that if you're new here or that you haven't done so already, you subscribe to us here on the YouTube side of things. If you're listening to us in the podcast feed, make sure you join us after every single Jets game. We go live here on the Locked On Sports New York YouTube channel to break down these games, and it was very nice to finally have a victory edition of the Locked On Jets postcast. Have not had one of those in a very long time, over a month since we've been able to put together a victory edition of this show. But appreciate everybody who was here, who joined us live here on the YouTube side of things. For those of you catching us in the podcast feed later, we appreciate you as well. Make sure you subscribe, turn on that notification bell so you can join us next time. But that is going to do it for us here, as the New York Jets do not turn Halloween into a horror movie on Thursday Night Football. Instead, it was a good ending for the New York Jets, who now turn their attention to the Arizona Cardinals. Have a good night, everybody.